When you move, you need a reliable company led by passionate folks, eager to assist its customers during a transitional process that needs to be smooth. Call Essential Moving Experts at 844-368-5750 for all your local and long-distance moving needs. You can rely on Essential Moving Experts. Mention the Big O Show and get $150 off. Family owned and operated, they offer free 30-day storage, full-service moving, fully licensed, bonded, and insured. Moving was never so easy. EssentialMovingExperts.com. It's time to go around the state and find out what's happening on the college football gridiron. With some of the best insiders in the state of Florida covering the Canes, Seminoles, and Gators. It's the Sportstalk305 State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable. With Manny Navarro from The Athletic, Ira Schofel from WarChant.com, and Kevin Brockway from the Gainesville Sun. Huddle up, Miami, Florida, and Florida State fans. Here's your host, Orlando Alzugari.
Good evening, college football fans all around the state, all around the world, because that's the beauty of this program. It gets to reach Canes fans and Seminoles and Gator fans all over the world. The boys are ready. Let's hit the round table. Let's start it off in Florida State. Ira, good evening, sir. The number 19 Seminoles took care of business against Louisiana 49-17. And Ira, what stood out to me in this game was kind of like computer language. You see there's a 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2 and all. There were like 20 different receivers and running backs in this game. Like everybody got – I'm shocked you weren't in the box score. I was looking for Schofel, where I'm going, come on, man, what is this? Share, let's go. And, because I know you have a little bit of eligibility left, so I thought maybe you'd get in there. But this is one of those games where you want to share the ball. And, man, did they share the ball.
It would have been one reception, -7 yards, and a fumble. Yeah, man, they did. I mean, look, it's Florida State. The final score is 49-17, but Louisiana scored 2 late touchdowns against the backup defensive players. It was 49-3 at one point in the third quarter.
That's when you played. That's when you played.
That's when I got in. Jordan, if it was 490-3, they might have put me in. Jordan Travis didn't play a snap in the second half. And that's really been the story of Florida State football for the last month. They've had these lopsided wins, and they've been able to play a bunch of different guys. And it's kind of been interesting because I do think it's going to something to watch with these guys is how happy they are with only 1 or 2 catches because they're spreading the ball around so much. So it's been a different experience. I don't think that's going to happen on Friday. Something tells me even if Florida State wins this game, they're going to have their top players in for most of the night.
Yeah, but it's smart on Norvell's part because you're evaluating and developing in the process. So you're doing it in practice, and then you're getting to see if it translates into games for some of them. And while it's only piecemeal, it doesn't matter. It's kind of part of the process. So it's still pretty smart on his part to kind of spread the love and, develop along the way.
Yeah, and really, all of these programs, when they were in their heydays, that was the best part of their success was they could play those backups. And then by the time those guys were starters, because, you'd have blowouts every week. And when you get to play those guys, when they become starters, they've already played a lot of college football. When you're scuffling the way Florida State has been for the last several years, you don't get to do that. Your starters have to play like every snap. A couple of years ago when Marvin Wilson was playing at Florida State, he would play like 70 snaps at defensive tackle. And that's crazy. You can't play that many snaps full out at defensive tackle, 300 pounds. But they had to because they didn't want to ever let him come off the field. And so, yeah, you're in a much healthier place now when you can rotate players like that.
Yeah,
Kevin?
I'm just curious about. We know Florida State can run the football. I mean, they're leading the ACC in 217 yards a game. I think the big question is in a game like this, can they stop the run against Florida? Now, Florida had an off day running the football, but that's kind of their bread and butter. I'm just curious about this run defense and what kind of test that they can provide for the Gators on Friday night.
Yeah, really, I think at this point, I think they're pretty equipped to do it. There was a point in the season where they were not. Fabian Levitt's their best defensive tackle, might be their best player on defense. He went out at the very end of the LSU game. He got hurt in week 2, missed 5 games, and they were pretty susceptible to the run during that stretch because some of the backups weren't as good. And a couple other guys were banged up. Jared Verse missed some time. And Wake Forest ran the ball effectively against them, especially up the middle, which was kind of surprising. Clemson ran the ball on them pretty well. NC State had success running the ball up the middle. But since Fabian Levitt's been back, they've been really good defending the run. So I think that's part of it is on him. Part of it also is they haven't faced really good offenses for the last month. No offense to Miami, but they haven't faced very good offenses in the last month. And so that's kind of been part of it too. But I think this will be a good challenge for them, especially when Anthony Richardson runs the ball. I mean, he's a different. They haven't faced a quarterback quite like him as a running threat. They did face Jaden Daniels early in the year, but I mean, this guy's built different, and that's going to be a challenge for them whether or not they can hold up stopping him in the running game.
Yeah, look out, Gators. They had 4 quarterbacks this week, also the Seminoles. So you have no idea who the hell's going to throw the ball also, too. And by the way, you spoiled Seminole fans. Damn it, I'm jealous because, there are little things in life that you kind of take for granted. And when you go to the ESPN sports page and you hit college football scores, Ira, I just want the Seminole fans to understand you guys are blessed right now. Because you don't have to go to the right side and hit, ACC to go find University of Miami. You're in the top 25, which I love. Now, this week, my Canes were in the top 25 because we were playing Clemson. So, obviously, we were in the top 25 this week. But those are the little things, Ira, that really spoil you, that your team has arrived when you don't have to go back to the right side and go find your confidence and go find your team because you're not in the top 25.
It's why do they do that? Like only 25 schools get the right to just get their scores right away. Everybody else has to click twice. Yeah. Why wouldn't it start the other way? I don't get it. But yeah, you're right. Right now, Florida State's living high. But it wasn't that long ago. I was right there with you. It wasn't that long ago.
I know, but that's why I just want to remember. I just want to tell Florida State fans, don't take it for granted, man. You work a lot less than we do to get our scores. Okay, so it's just one of those things. We got one more click than you guys. It's kind of like depressing. It's kind of like the guy that gets to the cruise ship and one guy gets, I'm going to the balcony, and then the other guy's going like 8 floors down next to the engine room. That's kind of what it feels like when we've got to go to the right side. We're going to the engine room. All right, Mr. Brockway, let's move over. What the hell happened there, brother? Wait a minute. Hold on a second. Will stop their run because they won't be able to pass. You were able to pass, but something happened here along the way that Vanderbilt, they were successful, but then Florida was also successful in countering it, but you just didn't have enough. Talk to me about this confusion between Vanderbilt and Florida this week.
Well, a handful of mistakes that were really costly. Obviously the muff punt situation where Florida caught a little bit of a bad break because Ricky Pearsall, who was their second string punt returner, got knocked out of the game with a concussion. And then, we're forced to use a guy, Jason Marshall, who had last returned punts in high school and probably went back on a ball he shouldn't have. He should have probably just planted his legs on the 10, kind of lost it in the sun. And that gave Vanderbilt the 14-6 lead. But truth be told, also, Florida could have had 2 touchdowns when they had field goals in the red zone. That was really costly. They had a couple of penalties, one on a Montrell Johnson run down to the 4-yard line that really hurt them. And Anthony Richardson, he made some good throws, but he also threw his first interception since the Missouri game, which led to 7 points on the other end, too, on a quick change. And, that's what happens. I mean, they were down at 1 point 28-12 in this game. I mean, it was a situation where Florida really had to throw to get back into the game. And that might have inflated AR's numbers a little bit throwing the football, but he was effective in part because Vanderbilt was so bunched up to stop the run. Got Dejon Reynolds involved, a guy that hadn't been used much. But the end result, 31-24 loss, and a lot of disappointment. First loss at Vanderbilt since 1988. And I don't know if some of you guys can remember what you were doing in 1988. I was, I had my little, buzz cut and cubic zirconium thinking I was going to be the next Vanilla Ice or something, That was, it's been a long time, let's put it that way, for Gator fans to see a loss there, and they're not very happy.
Well, Kevin, I loved your parachute pants tweet during the game as Vanderbilt was kind of pulling away there. Did you actually have a pair of parachute pants, Cavaricci? What did you have back then in the 80s?
Oh yeah, and we used to play hacky sack and all that good stuff. Members only jackets,
Yeah.
long in the 80s,
Look, I think Iris graduated to the non-rebuilding stage. You and I are still living that every single day, right, with these coaches. Yeah. Obviously, a big story aside from the game this week was what happened with their former quarterback recruit, Marcus Stokes. I wanted to kind of broach that subject a little bit because it was a big sort of story. I know they basically parted ways with him, but what was kind of the decision-making process with that, if you have any insight?
Yeah, Billy Napier wouldn't, discuss it publicly in the press conference on Monday, obviously, because that's a recruit. But I've just basically been told that, it was, basically a situation where, the school couldn't really have it. It's one of those things where, part of being a student at the University of Florida is you have to represent the university. And this was a situation where it was.
How about just being a human being?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's someone making a mistake. You could argue that, but
I'm going to say he's 17 years old still. And I guess, there's certainly been other recruits. Not that I'm defending his actions by any stretch of the imagination, but I guess my point is, was there any consideration to, hey, let's see if we can work with this kid and maybe put out a statement or something where he can help himself out? Use
it as a teaching moment. I mean, you could possibly do that, but I just think that they chose to go another direction for whatever reason. And if the Jalen Rashada commitment played into it, I mean, there's been some speculation about that as well. But I think it was probably more decision of representing the university as well, which goes into certainly being being an athlete at any school, and particularly at the University of Florida.
So let me ask you something, Kevin, going back to that game and then what's coming up this week. Vandy, 175 yards rushing. Do you think that Travis and the rest of the running backs for Florida State, and mind you, they had 10 of them this week, so they're like,
and don't forget about me. Don't forget about me.
11. I'm sorry. Yeah. Travis and 11 guys are looking at that like a Brontosaurus burger.
Yeah, well, Big O, and here's another storyline too, is that Ventrell Miller was ejected for targeting. So there's a chance that he might not play in the first half of that game, and he's their best tackler at linebacker. So that could make things even worse for Florida if he doesn't successfully appeal that targeting and is out the first half. They'd have to go with Derek Wingo, who's shown a little bit of promise, but is not the same player as Ventrell Miller. That could make things even worse, particularly early in that game. For Florida's run defense, which is, like the rest of the team, has been very inconsistent. You thought that they were starting to figure things out with the Texas A&M second half and the South Carolina game, but they really reverted. It was really a weird game, line of scrimmage game where Vanderbilt, their future doctors and lawyers and bosses, pushed around Florida a little bit, and that was highly surprising.
Sounds like they're demolition specialists is what looks like. 175 yards. Absolutely destroyed them. Wow. 175 yards. Did anybody have a heart attack on I know the Gators defensive coaching staff knows they're not that good, but 175 yards. I don't think any of those men have slept yet since Saturday, right?
This front seven though has been, tremendously, inconsistent and underwhelming throughout most of the year. And Trevon Dexter, I think, has been a really big disappointment. You expected a lot from him this season. He just hasn't delivered the plays. I know he's been double teamed a lot, and but that should free up somebody else, and it really hasn't. And Austin Powell, Antoine Powell-Ryland was a guy I thought in the previous 2 weeks was making some plays. And, the times they did get to the quarterback in that game, they got penalties, really costly penalties that kept a touchdown drive alive. So it's just a discipline too, grabbing the face mask, little things like that, a little shove after a play. And those were 2 costly penalties on 3rd and long that really hurt him.
Well, tremendously disappointing and inconsistent. Perfect segue. Manny, let's talk about the Canes.
Do we have to? I mean, can we just skip this segment this week? I mean, I feel like every week all I do is come on here and talk, about all the terrible things happening to Mario Cristobal, man.
I swear, if we put you we just replace you with a piñata, it's the same thing every week. Nothing changes. You know what I'm saying?
You don't give us candy though.
No.
Right? Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a good point on your part, Ira. All right. So listen. Although the only guy that doesn't think they got their asses kicked is our host coming up in Mike McCoy and the Miami Hurricanes watch. I don't know how he's not making a case for it, but 98 yards of offense. I mean, that's like not being able to get laid in a whorehouse with a fistful of dollars. I mean, that's just terrible. 40-10, 98 yards. Josh Gattis, what's up? Talk to me.
Miami hadn't had a game that bad in terms of offensive production since November 27, 1965, when they played a scoreless tie at the Orange Bowl with Notre Dame. I'm not even sure the forward pass existed back then. I wasn't around for it, though. That was a few years before I was born. But I'll tell you this. It was really, really just troubling overall that they couldn't even, move the chains. 6 first downs the entire game. They scored their only touchdown essentially because their defensive line, the one unit that's actually produced all season, was able to create a fumble. Look, it should have been much worse. I know Mike is a diehard Miami fan, and he's going to see it through those orange and green glasses. But the reality is, even if he hits Xavier Restrepo on the second play of the game, even if Jaleel Skinner doesn't have the ball in the third quarter bounce off of his face mask and fall incomplete, those are just 2 plays. You still lost by about 20 of them. Okay, I mean, they thoroughly handed Miami an ass whooping. And look, again, this is the 4th time now Clemson has beaten Miami by more than 25 points. Just really troubling. And really the offense overall, what can you say about Josh Gattis? I mean, 17 points a game versus Power 5 opponents. That's only 1.5 more points a game than USF against Power 5 opponents, okay? And USF's 1-10. So it shows you how far Miami's dropped off. And we knew there would be some sort of drop off, right, from Rhett Lashley when you go to this conservative sort of play calling, when you're running the ball, et cetera. There's going to be less explosiveness. But it's really been just sad for Miami to see the fall off that they've had.
At least when the Gators flopped, they did it on purpose. But the Hurricanes seem to do it every week, and they're trying to play defense. The Gators at least said, ole, ole, go ahead, you score. I know it's a really old reference. Go do your homework if you don't know it, but go ahead.
Yeah, Manny, I was wondering, the nice thing about college football today is, it's a good and a bad thing, but the portal is going to be open for business here in a couple weeks. And so Miami, just like Florida State's been doing the last couple of years, I'm sure Florida will be doing as well. They're all going to be shopping to get some better ingredients. If they figure out the scheme issues offensively, whether they make changes, make a change at the top there, or whatever, for the coordinator position, can they do enough in the portal in 1 year to get the offense to be good? Are there enough pieces that if you pick up, 2 or 3 linemen, a back, a receiver, and do some things scheme wise, can they get good or at least average to above average in 1 year? Or do you think this is a long-term process?
No, I mean, look, I think that you can make a quick turnaround nowadays because of the portal. I think you can go in there and find, especially receivers, right? I mean, Florida State is sort of the perfect example. They didn't seem like they had a guy who could catch a ball. Then all of a sudden, Johnny Wilson shows up on campus and Jordan Travis is, flinging it all over the place, and they have a really good offense now. So I certainly think you can make a quick turnaround. Look, a couple years ago, Miami picked up Charleston Rambo from Oklahoma. Look at the difference he made immediately, right? Jalen Phillips on the defensive side. So you could find impact players, and I think they will.
Osborne, by the way.
yeah, KJ Osborne's another guy who's in the NFL. So I definitely think Miami can turn this around quickly. I don't think there's any limitations in terms of time. But I think ultimately Mario is going to have to ask himself some hard questions. Does he graduate from, playing in rock fights where he's handing the ball off 50, 60 times a game and trying to win with defense and running game to, hey, let's spread this thing out like Nick Saban did, right? I mean, because Nick played the same way for many, many years. Defense and running the football, ball control. That's just not the game that kids want to play nowadays. You're not going to attract a lot of recruits playing that kind of football. I think this recruiting class that he's built so far, if he can hold on to Francis Mauigoa, the offensive tackle from Bradenton IMG Academy, and pick up maybe Samson Okunlola, all of a sudden now your offensive line goes from being below average, right? We'll say that to be nice, to, hey, he's back. Zion Nelson is back. You got a really good offensive line now with some of those guys that are solid building blocks for the next couple of years. So I think they can turn it around quickly. I don't think this is a 2, 3, 4 year wait, but he's got to definitely decide what he's doing with his offense.
Maybe Mario and Jimbo can have their own league where they just throw rocks at each other.
That's what it is. Yeah.
They can dress up like cavemen.
You go, Mario, you better get the Canes onto the front page of the scoreboard on ESPN, okay? That's all I got to say. I don't want to go searching for my damn team and in ACC. What the hell is that? All right. This weekend at 7:30, it is Florida taking on number 19 FSU. Florida, now you get on the front thing of the top 25 because you're playing Florida State. There you go. All right. FSU, by the way, favored by 9.5. The over and under is 58. Florida plus 300 on the money line. FSU minus 365 on the money line at 8 o'clock. It is Pittsburgh visiting Miami, and the Panthers are favored by 6.5. The over and under is 43.5. Pittsburgh minus 260 on the money line, and Miami is plus 220 on the money line. You are listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable right here on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
You're listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network. Subscribe to Big O Radio Show on most platforms.
There's no need to drive around South Florida wasting valuable time looking for a new or certified pre-owned Acura. Go to the #1 volume sales dealership in the Southeast United States. Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. Purchase with pace and space in a dealership tailored to your needs. From home buying to providing that personal touch. Contact the 2020 Satisfaction Award winner Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. 888-776-5123. That's 888-776-5123. Or visit them at 15601 Pines Boulevard in Pembroke Pines.
Hey guys, this is Hayden Hurst, NFL tight end. I'm partnering today with Red Recover. We're going to run you guys through some drills. I started using Red Recover last year, my 4th year in the NFL. It just helps me on Mondays after games, get my recovery process started, get back into the fold of the week, and get ready for the following Sunday. And if you want to recover like me, use Red Recover.
When you move, you need a reliable company led by passionate folks, eager to assist its customers during a transitional process that needs to be smooth. Call Essential Moving Experts at 844-368-5750 for all your local and long-distance moving needs. You can rely on Essential Moving Experts. Mention the Big O Show and get $150 off. Family owned and operated, they offer free 30-day storage, full-service moving, fully licensed, bonded, and insured. Moving was never so easy. EssentialMovingExperts.com. You're locked into the platform truly dedicated to college football around the state. This is the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
All right, we are back here on the Gridiron. We are ready to go around college football. We got a lot of headlines to go over. First, the one that showed up yesterday as a report said that Lane Kiffin would be leaving Ole Miss, going to Auburn. he shot it down very creatively by reporting the same thing that the reporter put out by using the reporter's name, leaving one station for another, and so on and so forth. And so he kind of squashed that. Now, did he squash it for now? Is he just putting out the fire for the moment because this deal isn't done yet? There's some talk about, Deion Sanders could be looking at some other places. People have talked about Auburn. What are you guys hearing? What do you feel? Kevin, let's start off with you since you are in that conference and with Auburn. Do you think they are going after Lane Kiffin?
Yeah, I do think so, and I think it was very telling how Ole Miss, pardon the pun with the Egg Bowl this week, but laid an egg against Arkansas because maybe they know it's coming too. Maybe the players do, and maybe they wonder, how much longer is Lane going to be the coach? It makes sense on a lot of levels. I think I think Lane is looking for a place that has big NIL dollars and has boosters behind it. That's going to be able to attract the best talent so we can really, really compete with the big boys. I think he realizes that there's a ceiling at Ole Miss that is not it. And you look at history. I mean, you look what happened with Tommy Tuberville when he left Ole Miss for Auburn and how that worked out for him, winning a national championship. And I think Lane probably sees that same opportunity and for as crazy as the booster situation is there and so forth. They'll give you the resources to get players, and he's the kind of guy that'll scheme it up and maybe create a rather exciting offense out there in the Plains.
You sure that's what he wants? Because does anybody know what he wants? Because,
I think
seriously, he's been at USC, who had all those things you just described, and I know NIL didn't exist then, and then he was at Tennessee, which has all those things you described, and he always moves on to something or gets fired from something. He
got ran off of USC. He failed.
I know he failed. But what I'm saying is, he had all these kind of opportunities, one way or another. Dude, he's the gypsy of college football. Seriously.
Yeah, he's the Larry Brown he's probably the Larry Brown of college football coaches. Tends to wear.
Yeah, but Larry Brown produces big time everywhere he went. At least, you know what I'm saying? Like. You brought him and you were getting, your program was going to go somewhere with Larry Brown, except towards the back end, obviously, here. He was in his older age. But, it's really weird how one program after another is willing to trust this guy. And is this really his final stop? You know what I'm saying?
Think that they can't resist the offensive mind, the play calling. I think that's a big factor.
And I also think the thing about Lane is, when you're sure you're the smartest guy in the room all the time and you're that confident, like nobody else meets up to your standards. So I think he's probably looking at Ole Miss like this place, I've gone as far as I can go. Let me go over here and they're going to give me those resources and I'll do more. And look, he might be successful there. But I think he's definitely going. These coaches, the last thing they ever are going to do is let people know that how early they accept a job. Jimbo Fisher took that Texas A&M job long before he left Florida State, but he would have denied it till the end. They had to not let him coach the last game of that regular season because they don't want to admit that they took a job while they still have a job. They've been lying to these kids. And I think Kevin's right. I think Ole Miss looks like a team right now whose head coach might already be out the door.
Yeah, I agree with all those sentiments. And I'll say this, though. I think, look, there's only about 10 places in the country where you can really win a national championship and really have all the resources you need, especially in today's game with NIL.
Central Florida and where else?
Not Central Florida, but definitely Auburn. That's a place where they will always, whatever they paid for Cam Newton, they got their money's worth, right? He delivered a Heisman, he delivered a national championship. They're willing to do that to beat Nick Saban. Nick's towards the end of his career here. I think Lane is perfectly set up in that state to become the king of Alabama as soon as Mr. Saban decides to step down.
All right, gentlemen, we are getting down the stretch now. We're going to need 4 teams to be in the playoffs. Manny, who are the 4 teams in your eyes after everything is all said and done, the dust settles? Who are the 4 teams in the playoffs?
Well, obviously, the loser of Michigan and Ohio State, I think, is going to end up getting bounced. I think TCU's opportunity to quote unquote lose was this past week against Texas. They're not going to lose this week coming up.
Iowa State, I think it is.
Right, they're not going to lose with Iowa State. So I think ultimately here, they're in a great position to make it. Obviously, Georgia's not going anywhere. They're winning the SEC and getting in there. So, in my mind, those teams, those three, and then the fourth would be USC, right? I mean, they're in position, but they got to beat Notre Dame and then finish off the Pac-12 title game. If USC loses and TCU loses, then I think you might invite the loser of the Ohio State Michigan game back into that top four. But I think
give me the four, not
well.
I'm
sorting it out, man, because
winning. Ohio State or Michigan, who is it?
All right, Ohio State's winning. Okay, Ohio State's winning. I would say in the end, the four will be Georgia, Ohio State, TCU, USC.
There you go. You pissed off the guy in the khakis, and I hope you don't cross Keith Sims in town because, luckily he's in Atlanta, so you're not going to piss him off. But the Cyclone is somewhere pissed off right now, okay? So you just –
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Iowa State Cyclones. How dare you? Ira, who are the four teams?
Man, this is going to be weak, but I'm exactly with Manny. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. I think Southern Cal – I kind of would have liked to have seen Southern Cal lose the other night, but it didn't happen. And I think it's going to be nice to some degree. And I am a Southeast biased, East Coast bias to the core, right? But I'm kind of looking forward to maybe having a TCU and a Southern Cal and a Georgia and an Ohio State where you have four conferences. You're not just two SECs and two. I'm looking forward to this. I think it's going to be good for college football too, to just have some diversity and not the same 3 or 4 teams every year. So I'm with Manny. I think it's going to be those 4 schools.
So you got the khakis out also. All right. Kevin Brockway, who are the final 4?
Ira, what happened to your West Coast bias? I'm curious because of this USC thing, but is it just because of the USC? It's just because of the USC brand name? USC lost to Utah, right?
Yeah.
Who lost to a mediocre Florida team at the Swamp.
Right.
I'm saying this, and I know that I think a lot of people counted them out with the Notre Dame loss, but if Clemson wins the ACC and it's 12-1, I think they're the fourth best team. So I would go with Clemson, and based on their history and their track record, TCU, Georgia, and Ohio State. Those
Ohio State.
Yeah. Yep. Interesting. I like that. All right. The Hendon Hooker question of the night. Bryce Young is non-committal about staying or leaving. Should he stay or should he go, Kevin Brockway?
Yeah, this is God. How old would he be? 26 or something if he comes back? I mean, I think he's been in college for 6 or 7, something crazy like that with the COVID year and so forth. And I mean, that's tremendously sad what happened to him. And in terms of the fact that, I mean, they would have been my pick for the 4th team had they beaten South Carolina and Vanderbilt finished it off with 1 loss over Clemson. But obviously their pass defense was exposed. But yeah, it should be his decision. I would respect it either way. But I don't know what kind of NFL future does he really have. I mean, he's kind of a dual threat, but does he really have the speed and the arm strength that's really going to wow NFL scouts?
Oh, so you were talking about Hendon. Yeah, Hendon, and I think they've already announced he's going to NFL.
I'm talking about Bryce. I just said the Hendon Hooker question because Hendon got injured. So
okay.
Bryce wants to either stay or go.
With
think of injury also as a.
With Bryce, 194 pounds. That's interesting to me. Could he take the punishment? Going to the NFL right away, I wonder. But if his stock is high right now, I would, if he's a 1st-round grade, why not give it a shot? I just wonder how effective he's going to be at his size at that next level.
He's 100% gone. I mean, listen, all they've been talking about is him being one of either the 1st or 2nd quarterback taken in the draft. There's no question to me. Bryce Young's got to go.
I'm with you, and I think, look, Caleb Williams is going to be number 1 next year. So you'd rather, if you think you got a chance to be at the top quarterback taken, you need to go out this year, because I don't think you would be next year.
Yeah, that's why I asked the Hendon Hooker thing, because the poor kid got injured, and if you're Bryce Young, you got to look at that and say, yeah, that forget it, dude. There's no reason for me to stay anymore. Let me get the hell out of here. All right, one more before we go to our final segment. I know it's not a great season this year for him, but he's done a great job overall. Mark Stoops now signs a long-term deal with Kentucky. Are you surprised that a bigger school didn't say, this guy's ready to take our school to the next level with Mark Stoops? Your thoughts on that? Go ahead, Kevin. You started off.
Here's something interesting. I had heard that there was a family issue with regards to him with his ex-wife being in Wyoming. So there were some rumblings that Colorado was going after him and was gonna pay him a lot of money. And apparently Kentucky stepped in and they made it worth staying there. And I'm not saying that Colorado is a great job, but it's a job that, certainly in the Pac-12, if you turn it around, maybe you could win there in an easier conference than the SEC. He's getting paid $9 million a year, but I don't know if he's taking Kentucky as high as it can go. I think that's the big question. And with Tennessee getting better, and if Florida can get its act together, I mean, what's Kentucky's ceiling? They lost to Georgia. I mean, Georgia's the top. I mean, that's a hard road in the SEC East right now.
But they've done a good job because, man, we're getting Kentucky players into the NFL now. So they're getting the quality of football in Kentucky has gone up. So I just got to give the man some credit, because I still, by the way, for the record, I'd rather stay in Kentucky and in the SEC than go to Colorado. Sorry, Colorado folks out there, enjoy it, roll it up and relax. Take it easy. Take it easy.
The one thing I would say real quick is just because Mark Stoops, he was the defense coordinator of Florida State not too long ago, and he when Florida State fired Willie Taggart, they kicked the tires on Mark Stoops to see how interested he was, and at that time, he kind of basically priced himself out of the job. Like, he told Florida State he had a long list of demands if he was going to come to Florida State, and I think Florida State was like, you've done a nice job at Kentucky, but I don't know if we need to do all of this. So they ended up moving on down the road. They end up with Mike Norvell. So I think Mark Stoops understands that Kentucky, as starved as they've been for football success, they adore him there. And you see almost like a power struggle now, where I don't think Calipari is real fired up with the basketball, with what they're doing for football now, because that's always been a basketball school. But in the big picture, we all know football is what brings in the money. So Kentucky's putting their chips in with Mark Stoops. And so I'm not surprised they're trying to lock him down. And I think he probably realized he's got a good thing, man. If he wins 8 games a year at Kentucky, or 9 games, they're going to be happy for a long time. You go some of these other, look, man, at Auburn, you get fired for winning 8 or 9 games. So it's not a bad place to be.
Oh, and by the way, basketball is done. There are no more stars. They're all going to the G League to get the money, or they'll go overseas. College basketball is nothing like, if we want to go back to the 80s. Those days are done. There are no more stars. That's why Calipari is not going to have the same kind of success, because your McDonald's All-Americans are going to the G League getting, $500,000 now. So you're not really going to have that anymore. And that's probably why Kentucky is probably focusing more on football, because they know that that's going to be really the cash cow in the end.
Yeah, I agree with everything Ira was saying about them only having to win 8 or 9 games. There's certain schools, though, that are just always going to be known for one sport. And I don't care what anybody says. Kentucky's always going to be a basketball school. That is basketball country. As long as you can win 8 or 9 games. It's kind of like Jim Larinaga at Miami, right? They just had a great run to the Elite 8. How many years is that going to buy him, right? I mean, if he wanted to coach another 10 years, they're not going to get rid of him. It's the same thing with the coach at Kentucky right now. I mean,
Larinaga can coach through osmosis while he's dead.
Right. And that's what happened. And that's basically what happened the 3 years prior, right? Miami basketball was terrible. There were people saying, they got to change the coach, but they didn't. And now he just got himself another deal, I'm sure, if he wants to stick around for another 5 years by going to the Elite 8.
By the way, tell Calipari if he wants to be considered a basketball school, don't lose back-to-back to Michigan State and Gonzaga.
Yeah, you're not getting the All-Americans anymore, dude. They're not coming through the door anymore. He
brought Sheboy back for $2 million, Big O. I mean, come on. He's got one of the best players in the SEC. He should be doing better with that group.
Yeah, well, but he's got one. He used to get like 7 or 8 of them or 9 of them rolling in all the time, and those Those days are done. He just doesn't have the same riches anymore, man. It's the whole thing has changed. All right, let's take a break. We're going to come back on the other side. We'll preview the matchups. We got Florida taking on Florida State, Miami taking on Pittsburgh. You are listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable right here on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
You're listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network. Subscribe to Big O Radio Show on most platforms.
There's no need to drive around South Florida wasting valuable time looking for a new or certified pre-owned Acura. Go to the #1 volume sales dealership in the Southeast United States. Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. Purchase with pace and space in a dealership tailored to your needs. From home buying to providing that personal touch. Contact the 2020 Satisfaction Award winner Craig Zinn's Acura of Pembroke Pines. 888-776-5123. That's 888-776-5123. Or visit them at 15601 Pines Boulevard in Pembroke Pines.
Hey guys, this is Hayden Hurst, NFL tight end. I'm partnering today with Red Recover. We're going to run you guys through some drills. I started using Red Recover last year, my 4th year in the NFL. It just helps me on Mondays after games get my recovery process started, get back into the fold of the week, and get ready for the following Sunday. If you want to recover like me, use Red Recover.
When you move, you need a reliable company led by passionate folks, eager to assist its customers during a transitional process that needs to be smooth. Call Essential Moving Experts at 844-368-5750 for all your local and long-distance moving needs. You can rely on Essential Moving Experts. Mention the Big O Show and get $150 off. Family owned and operated, they offer free 30-day storage, full-service moving, fully licensed, bonded, and insured. Moving was never so easy. EssentialMovingExperts.com. You're locked into the platform truly dedicated to college football around the state. This is the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network.
Welcome back. We got a nice little matchup here this week. Obviously, the matchup we get every year between Florida and Florida State. Saturday night at 7:30, Gators are visiting FSU. Let's start off with you, Ira. As I mentioned to Kevin earlier, Vanderbilt had their way on the ground. Florida State looks at this. They've got some pretty good running backs. They've got a very mobile quarterback. I kind of look at that and I say, if you're Florida State, sure you want to do some damage in the air, but man, you can really control this game on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, on paper that looks like a huge edge. If you're doing matchups, you would say that's a huge edge for Florida State. Florida State's run the ball for over 200 yards in 6 straight games. That's something that we haven't seen here in 3 decades.
Like under 6 yards a carry, just under like 6 yards a carry or something like that.
And it's just really been impressive the way they've run the football. Last week, I think they had 200 yards in the first half rushing. So they're content, as we saw in the Miami game. Jordan Travis only threw 12 passes. They're content to keep running the ball if they're having success with it. And I do think they'll have success with it. The offensive line's playing well. The running backs are playing well. And then they added a little reminder last Saturday against Louisiana. He only ran the ball 4 or 5 times, but Jordan Travis broke off a couple of runs where he kept it. He usually gives on the option plays, but he kept it. And, you get a reminder of how quick he is as a runner as well. So I think that's going to be the bread and butter in this game. And it's, again, Florida they have to play out of their minds because otherwise it looks like Florida State should have a huge advantage in that area.
How do they counter that, Kevin?
Yeah, just got to play more physical, tackle better, I think, better assignment football. I think that across the board, that's going to be, one of the keys. And just, play with a little more intensity. And I think they will. I think that they'll come out and certainly play harder in that game. But, they're going to have to establish – Florida's going to have to establish a run on their end too. That's what was really disappointing in that Vanderbilt game. And even Anthony Richardson, for as well as he threw the ball, he only had 25 yards rushing, and they're really at their best, Big O, when he's a true dual threat. And Florida's 6-1 this year when they've run for over 200 more yards. That's kind of the magic number. 0-4 when they don't. So if you're FSU and you can go into the game stopping the run, I think that's going to be a huge key as well. And if you do that and get the run game going at the same time, it could be really a long night for the Gators.
When do the Gators find out if they lose one of their defensive players for that first half?
Yeah, Ventrell Miller, it's still on appeal. I don't know if it will go until tomorrow on Wednesday or possibly into Friday, but they'll find out one of those days with regards to that, and that could be a really big blow because he's there. When they played without him in the USF game, Florida's defense really had a lot of issues with communication, with tackling, and so forth, and. But you talk about communication issues going into week 11 and week 12, and that's very alarming. You start to wonder if the scheme that they're trying to run here is just too complicated for players to grasp. And I think it's probably hurt them at different times throughout the season defensively that they have not been able to grasp, what Patrick Toney has been, scheming up there.
The one thing,
by the way, I'm sorry, Ira, the Florida defense has been inconsistent all year. What has been the difference between the Florida defense on the road and at home?
Yeah, on the road, but I mean, Texas A&M, they played pretty decent in the second half of that game. So they've certainly showed, Tennessee game, obviously you're facing a high-powered offense in that game. And Vanderbilt, again, with the defense, Big O, I mean, 14 of those 31 points came on a short, muff punt, special teams on a short field. So there was some good and some bad in the defense, but obviously letting a guy like Ray Davis run for over 100 yards was a little concerning. So, and the penalties on defense have really hurt. The one thing Florida has done well defensively, though, is takeaways. They've 22 forced turnovers on the year. And they did have 2 more in the red zone in that game against Vanderbilt. Otherwise, the game could have been even a little more uglier. So they have managed to their secondary. They have managed to come up with some picks and force some fumbles here and there.
The one thing I was going to ask Kevin is, and I didn't see much of the game last Saturday, but a couple of people told me that there are times it looks like Florida's defense almost wasn't like as interested or just wasn't as sharp. But I think that can happen against Vanderbilt, right? Like, I think it's hard to get up for a Vanderbilt when you've got Florida State the next week. Do you think that was a factor at all? Do you think they'll be, if they're more motivated, are they more capable than maybe we think defensively?
That could also happen in 40 degrees with winds too. You know what I mean? I think that that might have played in. Maybe this is these are a bunch of Florida kids that don't like the cold weather. That factors into it. And you look last year at Missouri, it was the same thing where they let a game get away in the cold. So you start to wonder maybe if the elements came into play that way, and maybe made some guys sluggish. So I don't know if that played a role too, or if that's an excuse, but they certainly came out, like I said, some of the missed tackles, but we've seen them miss tackles in warm weather too. So I think it's just more of an indictment on a front seven that really has been inconsistent, that lacks depth and that lacks talent in certain areas. And then you take Ventrell Miller out of the game in the fourth quarter for the targeting call, and you're really in a situation where you're in a bind and you're relying on some experienced linebackers.
Yeah, let's not get into the Zach Wilson zone with the Jets complaining about the wind. Let's not really let's not get into that. All right. Now, in a game like this, Ira, is it when you look at what Richardson brings to the table? What do you think Florida State's going to try to do? Obviously, because I think what you want to try to do, since he threw one last week, you want to try to turn him over. I don't think you want the athlete to take over, right? I think you want to try to maybe force him to be a quarterback and force him into some kind of a mistake. Yeah,
and Florida State's defense has been very good about not giving up big plays through the air. They've kept, to some degree, we've criticized them earlier in the year because they'll play two deep safeties and they'll keep everything in front of them. And because of that, they don't create a lot of turnovers. This is not a Florida State defense that gets a lot of turnovers, but they've kept everything in front of them and they've made teams drive the field. And I think that's going to be the challenge for Anthony Richardson is, will he be willing to take the checkdowns? Will he be willing to just kind of maybe put together a 12, 13, 14 play drive? And can Florida execute well enough to do that? Because I don't think Florida State's going to give up the one or two big plays. They're going to try to get pressure on him. They as the year has gone on, Florida State has brought more and more pressure. They'll blitz linebackers, they'll blitz safeties, they'll blitz corners. They've now put up I think they're fifth or sixth in the country in terms of sacks now. And it's not because they have superstars at defensive end. They've brought pressure a lot of different ways. But I also think they got to be careful because they don't have a lot of guys on defense as big as Anthony Richardson in the back end. So you got to be careful. You might get in there and just force him out of the pocket. And now you got to deal with him out on the edge.
Right. Yeah. That's the athlete.
Florida, I think with Richardson too, the intermediate throws are where he struggles sometimes with his accuracy. And, Florida fans up here have been grumbling about some of the perimeter screens that are being called as well that really went for nowhere against Vanderbilt and were broken up into some 2-point conversions. So it'll be interesting, like you said, if he stays patient in that regard and takes the short and intermediate passing game and can make those throws. But I really think the key for Florida is, getting the run going too and back in that. And that really sets up everything for Napier's offense because he's so big on play action. And if you have the threat of the run, that makes the play action pass that much more effective.
All right, Kevin. Florida State is favored by 9.5. The over and under is 58. What do you think happens in this game?
Yeah, I've predicted 27-20. I think Florida will cover. I don't think they'll win. I think FSU will find a way to pull it out. Home crowd, Friday night, and so forth. And what do you think about this game being on a Friday night, by the way? It kind of takes a little away from high school football, I think. But I don't know if you guys have an opinion on that.
It definitely stinks from a high school football standpoint. I know there's a few teams in Tallahassee that are big. Like there's some big games going on and people are now going to be focused on this football game, but I understand why they did it. Florida has kind of lost some of its luster the last few years. Neither team's been great. And so by moving it to Friday night, you kind of put it on center stage on ABC and that got people excited. So I understand why they did it. And I think it's going to be a fun atmosphere and a fun game on Friday night, the only game on. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's going to be unfortunate for some of these high school football games up here.
Just don't think the same people are going to the same game anyway. When it's all said and done, I don't really think it's going to hurt attendance one way or another when it comes to high school. All right, so what's the prediction there, Ira? What do you think? They cover?
I do think they cover. I just think I think Florida. If Florida comes out and strikes a first punch or two, I think it could be a game for a while. But I just look at I just think Florida State's playing at a really high level right now. They're really well rested. All of the kind of soft factors are pointing in their direction too. The last 4 weeks, they haven't had to play their defensive linemen or offensive linemen really into the third or fourth quarter. So they're very sharp and fresh late in the season, which is a positive. Jordan Travis is as healthy, looks as sharp and healthy now as he did at the beginning of the season. They're playing well. They're confident. They're at home. They got to play at home last Saturday, whereas Florida was on the road in a bad environment. I mean, there's just all the factors seem to be pointing to Florida State, and I think they're going to play well. And I think I'm going to pick 35 to 14, Florida State.
There you go. See, you got to feel good, Florida State fans, because basically Ira Schoffel is telling you Florida State's going to dominate and hit all their field goals and win. Kevin Brockway says they're not going to cover, but still lose. Florida State will win, but they're going to miss a couple field goals. By the way, that's why they don't get to cover.
We also forgot to say that Anthony Richardson kind of guaranteed a win this week. He said when we get this one, I thought that was kind of interesting as well. In the press guy, I think it was a little slip of the tongue. It wasn't a full out Joe Namath guarantee, but it was interesting when he said when we get this one. Which is surprising.
It's amazing, guys, and you guys will remember this because we're all a little bit older. Go back and read articles from like the days leading to a Florida State Miami game in the 80s or a Florida State. I mean, the stuff guys would say back then was, if somebody said any of those things today, it would be like the coaches would lose their minds but it was just commonplace back then. Everybody guaranteed wins and talked about what they were going to do. It was a fun time back then.
The good old days.
Yeah, but then again, those programs were elite at that time. You know, they had some nasty players, top to bottom, throughout those rosters.
Swagger.
So there was a swagger, there was a cockiness that came with being those teams, and that's the difference. All right, let's go to a team that's lost all its cockiness right now. The Miami Hurricanes hosting the Pitt Panthers. Pitt favored by 6.5 on the road. Think about how things have changed. The over and under is 43.5. Talk to me, Manny. How do they stop Kendon Slovis? And especially, what is it? Israel Abanikanda?
Abanikanda, yes, correct.
Okay.
Monaconda, right? Yeah, I mean, look, he's a really good runner, and if you watched the Miami Florida State game a couple weeks ago, you saw what a really good runner and Trey Benson did to Miami's front. The Hurricanes probably won't have Corey Flagg in this game. He's been the starting middle linebacker. I know a lot of people that are Miami fans have complained about Corey Flagg for a long time, but he is the quarterback of the defense. He puts a lot of those guys where they need to be. And there is value in that. Even if he's not a great individual player himself, you do need that guy on defense. So Pittsburgh's perfectly set up for this game to dominate Miami. They've got a really good front four. Miami showed us last week against Clemson they don't do too well against teams that have good fronts. And so, I think this is a very troublesome game for the Hurricanes. But if Tyler Van Dyke plays, and I told you he might, on Saturday night right after the game, then I think it changes things a little bit for the Hurricanes. Can he be the Tyler he was at Pittsburgh last year where he was flinging the ball over the field? I'm not sure, but I think he can put up more than 98 yards.
Here's what I love about Canes fans or fans in general. Let's have a little fun with this one. Well, Corey Flagg, I'm not happy with him. Again, I get it. I went like this to you because he is up and down. But Canes fans act like they're still in the 80s. That there's 3 guys on the bench that are way better than that guy ready to go and take it. It's like everybody's – it's like the Dolphin, right? Oh, Tua's missing 2 more games. Oh, that's it. No, we should cut him. Okay, so wait a minute. So he wins all the games he plays. He wins more than he loses. What quarterback could you say that from the Dolphins in the last 20 years? Like they grow on trees? Yeah, go ahead and cut Tua. You'll get the next guy in line because that's worked out for you since Marino, right? So it's one of these things that fans Corey Flagg, I'm not happy with him. No, of course. And you must be happy with everybody else on the roster. I mean, It's like, come on, man. Give the kid a break. I get it. He's been inconsistent. I understand. DJ Ivy's been inconsistent. But guess what? He's been better as of late. So what do you want me to do? I mean, you got to hang in there, but it's not like there's 4 other guys in line ready to go and ready to take your job, and they're going to be way better. It's absolutely hilarious. Now, speaking of a secondary that obviously has had its ups and downs, they're not really playing a quarterback that's a threat. They're playing more of a team that is going to rely on their running game and their defense, correct? Yep. So how does Miami attack this, right? Is it stack the hell out of the box and stop this guy and force the Slovis kid to beat you?
Yeah, I think that's really the only way you have a chance in this game is to force Pittsburgh to make some mistakes. And the one thing Miami has been able to do over their last 2 games is force turnovers. They've forced 7 in the last 2 games, had 3 against Clemson in the second half. And, Cam Kitchens, God bless him. He's one of the few guys that probably deserves to be all conference this year for the Hurricanes. Ira, I hope we get him on the ballot somehow. He's leading he's tied for the national lead in interceptions. Last week led the team with tackles, forced fumble. I mean, look, he's not Sean Taylor, but he's good. He's good enough to deserve some recognition. So if you get Cam and a couple of guys on the defense to play inspired ball, Akeem Mesidor has been solid all season for them. 2 sacks last week, forced fumble that led to the touchdown. Jafari Harvey's has 5.5 sacks. You have guys on defense that can create plays. So if they can get pressure on Slovis and just do a decent job against Pittsburgh's running game, keep themselves in the game. If you got 9 playing quarterback, you might have the chance to pull this off.
Plus, they're playing for a bowl berth, right? The Gasparilla Bowl or something like that. They could, get in, right?
Whatever bowl, man. The bowl, the Flanagan's Bowl. Whatever they're gonna. Wherever they can get a game in, right? That's where Mario Cristobal will be happy with
That's
at this
it.
point.
The Pink Flanagan's Bowl. I love it.
Yes.
Anything, whatever they can get
over
in.
in Hialeah at
the swap shop.
At the swap shop right there.
Stop. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, or the Hialeah Flea Market Bowl.
Yeah.
Right there. Opalaka Hialeah is the place to go. Opalaka Hialeah. Come on, they've got the theme song and everything. We're gonna have a marching band, a bunch of old Cubans with Cuban coffee and pans and all that. It'll be a fun bowl. I can tell you that right there in the middle of the flea market. Yeah, so that's a good bowl. All right, give me the prediction. What happens? Pittsburgh and Miami. Pittsburgh favored by 6.5. How much do you have Miami winning by?
I don't have them winning. I think they're going to finish 5-7. I think they're going to just miss the cut. I think they're going to keep it close. I know that
you really don't want to travel. That's what it is.
Well, listen, hey, I could be done after this week, brother. I mean, this is Thanksgiving, drive home, cover the game, right into vacation. I'd love to do that. No, they're going to keep me busy no matter what. I mean, there's going to be about 200 guys transferring out of here in the next couple of weeks, so I will be working no matter what. But
I drove by the university on the way home, and the line outside, I thought there was like some movie or something. No, those are players ready to transfer. And I'm like,
it started.
There's already a line longer than back when I was a kid in Jaws and Miracle Theater. There was it was 3 blocks long. That line is longer right now for Mario Cristobal.
And Mario's packing their bags for them.
Right. Oh, yeah. He's got all of them. He's got everybody there. Just here you go, son.
One-way tickets.
All the parents, come pick your kids up, please. We need you to come pick them up.
Derek Jeter to give him a goodie bag too at the same time.
It's like last call. We don't care where you go, but you can't stay here. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
Can't stay here. Yep.
That's it. Don't let the door hit your ass on the way out, kid. Have a great one.
Yeah. I'm going to pick Pittsburgh 24-20. I think Miami scores a couple touchdowns. It's going to be crazy. They're going to score twice in this game. It's going to be nuts.
24-20. Wow, yeah. That's a strong finish by the Canes. I like that. All right. I like that. All right. Time to wrap it up. We got to thank Sean Stanley, the man that masters the program, Chad Shobe, who also produces this show, and also the Miami Hurricanes Watch. We thank Ira, Manny, and Kevin. Appreciate all of you for tuning in and downloading it. I'm Orlando Alzigari. This is the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sportstalk305 Network. Stay tuned. The Miami Hurricanes Watch with Mike McCoy is next.
You've been listening to the State of Florida Gridiron Roundtable on the Sports Talk 305 Network. This program is mastered by Sean Stanley and Chad Shobe. Make sure to subscribe to the Big O Radio Show on all platforms. Thank you for supporting us.